he was admitted to, or did he find physical treasure of some kind? We met on one of our visits the grandson of the man who had been verger to Béranger Saunière at Rennes, and he maintained that his grandfather had found a twist of parchment inside a glass vial and had taken it to Béranger, who had been a bit dismissive and said, well, go about your duties, I'll see to this. And it was shortly after that discovery that Saunière became one of the richest men in the south of France.
I love
So, was it a plan of where the Visigothic rulers had been buried, or the old Merovingians were buried? And was he doing a little bit of grave robbery on the quiet? There's so many mysteries attached to him. It's one of the... If we had the 7 most mysterious things in the world, that's it.
That's one of them. Is it a big place?
No, it's very small. It's a little hilltop village. And the biggest place nearby is Carcassonne, which again is a mysterious old medieval walled city. And you just drive down from Carcassonne to Rennes-le-Château, and close to it is an equally mysterious little village called Cuise-Montazelle. And the Montazelle, the Mount Hazel part of the Montazelle name, ties in with witchcraft and magic. And Béranger Saunière was born there in Cuise, and when he made his money from whatever source and built that mysterious watchtower, which figures in every book and every program ever televised about Rennes, you can stand in his watchtower and see the house where he was born at Cuise. It's just as if he was trying to keep that network open and alive. And we've actually slept in the old, what was once a luxurious villa, the Villa Bethania, which he built with his money. And that's a very mysterious place as well. You could almost feel as if he's still there.
Now, are you familiar at all with the John Teeter time traveler story? Has that ever made its way out there to the United Kingdom?
Yes, it's got over here to the UK, and I'm very interested that Teeter had claimed that he was a soldier from about 300 years ahead of us, and he put forward, didn't he, a lot of strange forecasts about things that were going wrong.
Well, 2036 is when he said he came.
Yeah.
2036, and he put some very strange things on websites and postings. You can read all about him because there's an individual by the name of Oliver Williams who comes on the show who has tracked those postings, but it's John Teeter, TITOR.com.
Yeah.
But
I'll have to have a good look at those.
I mean, it's possible if time travel eventually gets discovered, that they could come back here.
Yeah, and then, of course, we're up against what you and I have discussed on a number of occasions, this whole question of, are there any probability tracks? And so when someone from the future, let's just give Taito the benefit of the doubt and say that he's real, that he's genuine, that he is a real time traveler, that he's come back from 2036 to tell us some of the things that are going to happen. But all he could tell us, if we go along with this idea of the probability tracks and the worlds of if, is what has happened on his track.
Exactly.
So that the things he forecast may be totally different from... They may have been real history for him, and he may be truthful, but he's shifted a probability track to come to us, as well as shifting time. May I just go from that to a strange parallel piece?
Sure. And then we'll wrap up the hour with calls. I can't believe 3 hours have gone by already.
No, I can't either, George. It's just wonderful. Love being with you. Love working with you. And just very briefly, this goes back to a program that I made regarding Nostradamus. This was way back in 1999, because you have been talking very interestingly about 2012 and the forecasts there. And Nostradamus had apparently written that in July of 1999, everything was going to end, and an awful king of terror, and in French, the roi d'effrayeur, the king of terror, was going to come, and that was going to be pretty well the end of things. Now, a very expert researcher on Nostradamus got hold of one of the early editions of Nostradamus's work and found that everything hinged on where the printer had placed the apostrophe. If there was no apostrophe, it was roi de frayeur. And you know, when you defray somebody's expenses, you're helping them. You defray.
That's right.
Yeah, you pay back what you pay something for them. But if it's got an apostrophe in, it's roi de apostrophe a frayeur, which means king of terror. And in the original version, Nostradamus had written it as no apostrophe, so it was going to be a good king, a benign ruler who would pay off expenses. And, of course, one of the things that happened when everybody was terrified about 1999 being the prediction of the King of Terror, what really happened was that some Western nations cancelled the debts of some third world nations. They defrayed the expenses of the people who couldn't pay. It was an act of kindness and charity by wealthy nations. So that one apostrophe changed it from a forecast of terror to a forecast of, there will be a good time coming when debts will be paid or cancelled.
Perfect. Let's go to Alan driving around in San Clemente, California, west of the Rockies. Hi, Alan.
On top of it, good morning to you both. George, you're at the top of your game. What an incredibly entertaining show this morning.
Thank you.
Lionel, sir, what an honor.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to be on George's show anytime and to have a chance to talk to all our wonderful listeners, and thank you for calling in.
Lionel, if I may touch on time travel just for a moment. If we could say that, for instance, in 30 minutes at a lab next to the Royal Albert Hall, we could transport back 67 years to a point right outside the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Honolulu at 7 o'clock in the morning, September 7th, 1941. Every physical act that's happened in the physical universe would have to be undone getting back to that point. How could that possibly happen?
Wow, no, that's a fascinating way of thinking around it. I like that very much. It's a very challenging idea. If we are looking at going back through, let's just think of, shall we say, a very interesting tapestry.
And this is where time tracks come in again.
Yeah, I think it is, because if we think of the present moment, which the three of us and all our listeners are now experiencing, and we think of that as the completed tapestry, that the images, the pictures, the sights, the sounds, everything that makes up this moment now is there. Now, if we take the idea of having to unravel it, to unpick it, to go back to a moment in, let's say, 57 years ago or wherever we're heading for, then the alternative thought, because that would be extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, the other thought is that when time travel takes place, if it can take place, we don't unpick it. We go back over the front of that tapestry called now, and we think of it almost like a roll of tapestry that's been put like a roll of carpet, and we're going back and back round that spiral till we find the other point. And then perhaps we can't get into it. Perhaps we can only observe it. In that case, it wouldn't be necessary to do any unpicking. It would just be a matter of looking. And this ties in with those theories of J.W. Dunn called The Serial Universe, and another of his books called An Experiment with Time. And Dunn suggested that time was rather like a ball of thread or a ball of wool where one strand crossed another, and if you had to travel inside the strands as if they were hollow tubes and you were traveling along them, then a period of years would pass. But if you could go from where they actually crossed into the thread underneath, even though going the long way is 40 or 50 years, going going the shortcut way would take you from 2008 to 19